Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive with us? Today we're going all the way to wartime Hamburg, Germany.
Oh, yeah.
To meet a fascinating group known as the Brezelbuben, or as you might say it in English, the Brezel Boys.
Right.
Our main source material this time. A personal chronicle written back in 1946.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
It offers a glimpse into their lives.
And I mean, a real glimpse.
Beyond the typical historical facts and figures.
Exactly. Their humor, their day-to-day struggles even.
Finding those bright spots even in the darkness of World War II.
Yes, exactly.
We're talking about a close-knit group of young people, almost like a secret society in the middle of all this chaos.
Like,
and get this, they were totally into jazz and swing music.
which was dangerous.
Incredibly dangerous.
The Nazi regime saw that as a huge threat.
So these youngsters weren't just listening to this forbidden music.
No, they were celebrating it.
A real act of rebellion, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely a way of saying, we will not be controlled.
So who were these Brezelbuben?
Well, most of them were apprentices.
Oh, really?
All working at the same Hamburg export firm.
Okay, what was it called?
Bernhard Buschmann.
Bernhard Buschmann, okay.
They specialized in trade with Persia.
Interesting. So the Chronicle zeroes in on 2 young women and 4 young men.
Yes, each with such distinct personalities, too.
I love that they all have these quirky nicknames.
Monk Edward.
Nun Franziska.
Klausner Epi.
You get a sense of their playful spirit just from those names alone.
A little irreverent, too, right?
Definitely, especially considering the time and place.
Nazi Germany.
A regime obsessed with control and conformity.
So for them to choose these names to embrace being different.
That really says something.
It does.
So they had these nicknames, this love for forbidden music.
What did they actually do, though, as the Brezelbuben?
That's the question, isn't it?
They held these gatherings. Often themed parties, even all in each other's homes.
So imagine this rationing, air raids, constant fear.
And they're creating these little pockets of normalcy of joy.
Celebrating life.
With music,
food,
day
drink,
shrieks.
Oh.
The Chronicle makes those gatherings come alive.
It does.
They had this Eisbärenfest, the Polar Bear Festival.
And their own version of Oktoberfest.
Costumes, decorations, homemade food and drinks galore.
But it wasn't all just fun and games.
Right.
Remember, the Nazis were obsessed with controlling German culture.
Every aspect.
So for the Brezelbuben to hold these gatherings, to embrace this banned music.
It was a way of taking back their own cultural identity.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a subtle form of resistance.
Like saying, we won't let you dictate how we live, how we express ourselves.
But also pretty risky, wouldn't you say?
Oh, incredibly.
I mean, we're not talking about a slap on the wrist here.
No arrest, interrogation, even imprisonment.
You might be wondering why jazz was considered so dangerous.
Right. It's just music.
Yeah. Why was it such a threat?
Well, to the Nazis, jazz represented everything they opposed.
Okay.
Decadent, racially impure, a symbol of the enemy.
Even. It completely undermined their vision of a unified Germany.
So listening to it, let alone playing it.
Seen as a direct challenge to their authority.
And get this, they held a lot of these gatherings in the apartment of one member who lived in the same building
Wow.
as the Hamburg police president.
It's attention right.
Unbelievable.
One wrong move, one nosy neighbor, and their world could come crashing down.
It's incredible they pulled it off for so long.
It is.
That part about their Sieg Heil salute, I laughed out loud.
You mean right before they meticulously blacked out the windows?
Exactly. It's a scene that's both humorous and chilling.
Right.
Highlights the almost surreal existence they were living.
Navigating this world where personal expression could be dangerous.
But still clinging to their humanity.
I think that's one of the reasons this chronicle is so captivating.
Definitely.
It captures that absurdity.
1 minute they're celebrating with this forbidden music.
The next, they're giving a mock Sieg Heil to avoid detection.
The complexities of life under a totalitarian regime. So we've got these Brezelbuben defying the Nazis with their secret gatherings. But what about the man behind the Chronicle?
Hans Helmuth Sievers.
Who was he?
From what we gather, he was a bit more introspective.
Oh, really?
Than the other Brezelbuben.
Interesting.
Seems like he found his own form of expression by documenting their story.
The fly on the wall, observing and recording it all.
But not just a passive observer.
Right.
He was an artist in his own right.
I love that.
You could see it in his illustrations and writing style.
We also know he was connected to Hanley's Ponto.
Right. Niece of the famous actor Eric Ponto.
Suggesting a broader artistic network in wartime Hamburg.
Fascinating, isn't it?
So what can we learn about everyday life under Nazi rule from this chronicle?
That's a great question.
It's not just about those wild parties, is it?
Definitely not.
What Sievers captures so brilliantly are those subtle acts of defiance.
Those coping mechanisms people develop.
That ever-present fear lurking beneath the surface.
It paints such a human picture of life under that kind of regime.
A regime trying to control every aspect of existence.
And for the Brezelbuben, their gatherings, their love for jazz.
It became this powerful form of resistance.
That's that personal liberation.
Like they were saying, we will not be defined by your ideology.
Makes you wonder how they maintained their spirits.
Right.
Their sense of self, even in the face of such oppression.
What did these gatherings mean to them on a personal level?
It must have been more than just escape.
Yeah, I think it went deeper than that.
Finding connection, a sense of belonging.
In a world that was trying to tear them apart.
And the music itself.
Right.
Jazz with its improvisation, its energy.
Its celebration of individuality.
It must have been a lifeline for them.
A reminder that there was still beauty and joy to be found.
Exactly.
It really is remarkable.
It is.
It's a small group of young people risking everything.
To hold on to a piece of themselves.
To find moments of happiness in the midst of a global conflict.
It really speaks to the resilience of the human spirit.
It does. All right, so we've established these Brezelbuben were all about defying the Nazis.
With their love of jazz and swing.
But let's get into the nitty-gritty of those legendary gatherings.
The Chronicle really brings them to life here.
What's so fascinating is how their gatherings evolved.
They started simple, right? Just getting together, finding comfort in each other's company.
But as the war dragged on and things in Hamburg got worse...
Their celebrations took on this more defiant quality.
Almost theatrical, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
The Chronicle mentions their first official gathering.
Oh, yes.
September 6th, 1941. They called it the founding of their order.
Like a real secret society.
They went all out decorating, dressing up even a formal ceremony.
Sievers describes how each Brezelbuben got a copy of this little booklet.
Oh, really?
Written by Monk Edward, filled with their inside jokes and shared experiences.
Like creating their own little world, a haven from the reality outside.
Exactly.
Creating normalcy amidst chaos. That's incredible.
But it wasn't just about escapism.
You're right. There are hints of a deeper purpose.
Remember, this is a time when Nazi ideology was everywhere, trying to control everything.
So for the Brezelbuben to hold these gatherings, to embrace this forbidden music.
It was a way of asserting their own identity, their values.
The music itself played a huge role in that, right?
Yeah.
Jazz and swing.
It wasn't just personal preference.
It was a deliberate act of resistance.
Absolutely jazz with its roots in African-American culture.
The improvisation, the individual expression.
It represented everything the Nazis hated.
Freedom, diversity, a rejection of their rigid conformity.
So by embracing this music,
Brezelbuben were making a statement.
They were saying, we will not conform, we will not be silenced.
But it wasn't always serious business, was it?
Oh no, some of their gatherings sound pretty wild.
Sievers describes this costume fest, a costume party, on January 9th, 1942.
As a test of the order's virtues.
Right, where their commitment to renouncing worldly pleasures
Was put to the test, shall we say.
I don't think they were exactly living up to those monastic nicknames.
Not quite.
Costumes galore, tons of food and drink. Sievers even mentions a late-night dip in the landlord's bathtub.
There's this wonderful youthful energy in Sievers' writing.
A delight in the absurd.
It reminds us that even in dark times, people still crave joy, connection, laughter.
It makes you wonder how they managed to pull it off without getting caught.
Right, living practically under the nose of the police president.
Weren't they ever worried about being discovered?
I'm sure they were. But Sievers doesn't focus on the fear.
He highlights their resilience.
Their determination to carve out these spaces for themselves, to live life on their own terms, even if just for a night.
I love that story about the cluster box incident, their attempt at group photos.
Oh, yes.
They set up these elaborate poses only to discover the lens had been closed the whole time.
Poor Billy Boy, the aspiring photographer.
You can practically hear Sievers chuckling as he describes Billy's devastation.
Those little details, those moments of humor make the Chronicle so endearing.
It humanizes them. You know, remind us they weren't just symbols of resistance.
They were real people with their own quirks and foibles.
Exactly, and that's what makes their story so powerful.
It's not about grand acts of defiance.
It's about the everyday courage it took to simply live, to love, to laugh under those circumstances.
Their gatherings weren't always wild parties, though.
Right. There were also moments of quiet reflection.
Times when they came together for support and solace.
Like when they celebrated birthdays or sent off members being deployed.
And knowing the dangers those young men faced.
The gathering on February 25th, 1945 really stood out to me.
Oh, yes.
Just a few months before the war ended, Hamburg had been devastated by bombings.
Held amidst the ruins of their city.
It really speaks to their resilience.
Imagine the terror, the loss, the fear.
Yet they still found strength to come together to find comfort in each other.
The human need for connection, especially in times of crisis.
And even then, they found a way to celebrate, to hold on to hope.
Sievers describes them digging up a stash of wine from the cellar.
Turning a somber gathering into a defiant toast to survival.
Their spirit is incredible, refusing to let the darkness consume them.
Hard to believe we're already at the final chapter of this chronicle.
It is.
The Brezelbuben's Oktoberfest celebration.
October 6th, 1945.
Just a few months after the war ended. Feels symbolic, doesn't it?
It does, like a triumphant return.
After surviving the unimaginable.
They transformed that attic into a makeshift Capuchin bar.
With all the trimmings, right?
Oh, yeah. Decorations, costumes, mountains of food.
A real feast.
After years of scarcity.
Sievers writes that they're celebrating being alive.
You could feel that energy.
This need to embrace life after so much darkness.
But there's also a hint of sadness there.
Yeah, a sense of melancholy.
The war has left its mark.
They've lost friends, witnessed horrors.
The world they knew is gone.
This joy tinged with sadness.
Rebuilding, but carrying the weight of their experiences.
Makes you wonder what became of them after the war.
Right? Did those bonds endure?
Did they keep gathering?
Did their wartime experiences shape their later lives?
The chronicle ends there, unfortunately.
We're left to wonder.
Did they ever find those other 9 copies Sievers mentions?
What other stories are out there waiting to be discovered?
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Maybe that's part of what makes it so compelling.
It sparks the imagination.
It invites us to fill in those gaps, to connect on a human level.
And I think that's one of the most valuable things about these personal stories from history.
Absolutely.
Reminding us that behind the big events, the dates and battles,
The real people
living extraordinary lives.
makes history feel more tangible, more relatable.
Reminding us that even in the darkest times,
The human spirit endures.
and that's a message we could all use, right?
Especially today with our own challenges and uncertainties.
What can we learn from the Brezelbuben, then?
About resilience, about hope, about human connection.
I think they show us that joy can exist even in the darkest times.
That connection and community can be sources of strength.
And that even small acts of defiance,
Like listening to forbidden music.
can be powerful expressions of the human spirit.
It's a reminder that history isn't just about events.
It's about people.
And sometimes those hidden stories
Like the Brezelbuben Chronicles.
can be the most illuminating.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to continue this dive.
Explore the history of wartime Hamburg. Seek out other personal stories from that era.
You never know what treasures you might uncover.
And who knows?
Maybe somewhere out there, those other 9 copies of the Chronicle are just waiting to be found.
Until then.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.